So after everything that went on over this offseason and everything that went on over last year in general for the Green Bay Packers, even though this is something that I've said about almost every single team I've made a video about so far, this is going to be a very interesting and very peculiar year for the Green Bay Packers this 2021 NFL season. And I'm not going to go into the whole drama with Aaron Rodgers over this offseason. I'm sure if you're a Green Bay Packers fan watching this video, or if you're someone just watching this video in general, you understand what happened over the year with Aaron Rodgers, really over the past 18 months with Aaron Rodgers, and really if you want to go even further, the past 2 years ever since they drafted Jordan Love, and just the whole saga since that moment. So a couple things about last season for this Green Bay Packers team, what they did well, what they didn't do well. Offensively, they were a top 10 team across every statistical category. You honestly could put them in the realm of having the best offense in the league last year. They were 9th in passing yards, 8th in rushing yards. They led the league in turnovers and points, meaning they turned the ball over the least amount of times. They scored the most amount of points. And in terms of allowing sacks, they allowed the second least sacks in the NFL last year. And defensively, they really were not that much worse. They were 7th in passing yards allowed, 13th in rush yards allowed, 13th in points allowed, and 10th in sacks. The only thing that they did not do well last year was take the ball away. But if you're a team in the NFL and the worst thing that you do is take the ball away from the other team's quarterback, or you just take the ball away not a lot of times, I am fine with that. Because if you're allowing the 7th least amount of passing yards, 13th in rushing yards allowed, you're 10th in sacks, you're 13th in points allowed, and your offense is possibly the best offense in the NFL, you can handle a little bit of drawback when it comes to taking the ball away. And the good thing about this offense last year was that they had one of the most continuous groups within the NFLs when it comes to an offensive standpoint. You know, they had both of their running backs in Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, who had been there for a long time. Devontae Adams has been there for a long time. A lot of the offensive line has been there for a long time. The only guy who was really missing from previous years was Brian Bulaga, the right tackle, who ended up signing with the LA Chargers last year. They don't really have a tight end, but at that same token, tight end is not the position it used to be in terms of, you know, a importance factor. So I don't think they really had a drawback from that. So offensively, this team, like I said, not only were they the best in the NFL last year at, you know, you can make a conversation about that, but they had a continuous group that had a lot of chemistry. Something that's interesting about this defense, though, you know, from last year is they had some names on the team who developed into decent players for the team. You have the obvious stars for the team. You have Zadarius Smith, who is a 12.5 sack getter last year. He was one of the few guys who actually provided a pass rush for this team. Him and Rashawn Gary are the only guys who had more than 5 sacks last year, and Rashawn Gary had 5 exactly. But I mean, Zadarius Smith, he was always a guy that was going to be around the quarterback and around the ball. Like I said, 12.5 sacks. He had 23 QB hits. He had 12 tackles for loss. He was a guy who was always in the backfield for this team. And then when you look at guys in the back end of the defense, you have names like Darnell Savage, who ended up with 4 interceptions last year in his first real year as a starter for the Green Bay Packers in that back end. You have Jair Alexander, who even though he only had 1 interception, he ended up with 13 pass deflections. He was one of the best corners in the NFL last year, getting a Pro Bowl nod, and he probably deserved a little bit of first-team All-Pro hype. You know, there's a lot of guys on this defense who were very well playing for this team. They played very well for the team. You still have other names like Kenny Clark. You still have other names like Rashawn Gary, like Preston Smith, who are going to be decent players for this team as well. It's kind of hard to talk about what didn't go well for this Green Bay Packers team last year because they were one game away from going to the Super Bowl. They really just ran into the buzzsaw that was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. Aaron Rodgers threw for 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. The running game was incredible between Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Their passing game was incredible. Like I said, Devontae Adams is possibly the best wide receiver in the NFL. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a decent year in it's either his second or third year last year. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams were great options out of the backfield. A.J. Dillon stepped up in that third running back role as a 22-year-old rookie and played pretty well. I mean, he didn't fumble at all last year, so I mean, that's really all you can ask for. Alan Lazard got injured. He was kind of off and on the field, but he still put up 450 yards for the team. Really, the only thing that did not go well for this team was defending the pass in the NFC Championship. Kevin King was a little bit of a liability when it comes to how they played in the passing game, especially in that NFC Championship. Their linebacking core is a little bit weaker than you would want for a championship team. We saw, the reason the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the championship last year is because their linebacking core, not only the outside linebackers, but the inside linebackers as well, was as strong as it was between Devin White, Levante David, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Shaquille Barrett. So for a team like the Packers who wants to be in the championship, their linebacking core is a little bit weak, but like I said, that's something that I think they could handle. Now, in the offseason, the Green Bay Packers really did not lose a whole lot from their team. However, some of the guys that they did lose were very good players for this team. They ended up losing their starting center, Corey Linsley, to the LA Chargers, which that is a second 2-year streak in which they lose a really good starting offensive lineman to the LA Chargers. I don't know what that's all about, but they lose guard Blaine Taylor to the Houston Texans. They lose running back Jamal Williams to the Detroit Lions. I think really that's the one that hurts the most, because Jamal Williams could have just stayed in Green Bay and played for a actual championship contender. Instead, he goes to the Detroit Lions, where I'm not sure what. I just don't know. Like, that just has to hurt to see him do that. And really, on the defensive side of the ball, the only main guy that they ended up losing over the last free agency was Christian Kirksey. So, not really a lot lost there. Now, who is new to the team? They ended up drafting center Josh Myers in the, I believe, second round of the NFL draft this past year out of Ohio State. They ended up drafting Amari Rodgers out of Clemson in the third round, and they signed right tackle Dennis Kelly to play, like I said, that right tackle spot. They also drafted cornerback Eric Stokes in the first round of this last year's draft, and they signed outside linebacker Devontae Campbell. So I'm just going to kind of keep it blunt when I talk about the expectations of this Green Bay Packers team and how I think they're actually going to fulfill those expectations over this year. This has to be a championship year for the Green Bay Packers. And what's built up to this point, the past 2 to 3 year stretch, has not been a championship building 2 to 3 years. They drafted A.J. Dillon last year, who, I get it, I love A.J. Dillon, the quad father or whatever they call them there in Green Bay. Having a third running back, or now I guess second running back, is not changing your championship expectations. Drafting Jordan Love in the first round a couple years ago is not changing your championship expectations. Drafting a cornerback in the first round of this past year's draft, I like Eric Stokes. I think he's going to be a good player on that defensive side of the ball. He's going to help out with a lot of things. But not improving your offensive line, not improving your wide receiver core, not at least improving the tight end position, which has been a weaker position for this team for a majority of Aaron Rodgers' career. I don't know if the past 2 to 3 years between the draft, between the free agency, between the players that they've lost, I mean, like I said, they lose 2 guys on the offensive line who are almost Hall of Fame players. I think Brian Bulaga, he's one of the best offensive linemen that Aaron Rodgers has played with in his entire career. Corey Linsley, you could say almost the exact same thing from that center position. And they lose both of those guys back-to-back years. As far as the wide receiver core is concerned, Randall Cobb, that's all you're adding? Amari Rodgers, that's all you're adding? I like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I like Allen Lazard. I think Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. But they aren't doing enough. And that's why, this team's going to go 13-4. This team's going to go possibly 14-3. I think the floor for this team is at least double-digit wins. Unless Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, which I would pray that doesn't happen, because I don't want any starting quarterback. I don't want any player to get hurt in general. If Aaron Rodgers does go down, though, this team is winning 5 games. If Aaron Rodgers plays the whole season, they're winning at least 10. That's kind of just the floor with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're going to have the best passing offense in the league. They're going to be a decent running team. And defensively, they're going to be decent. Everything they do is either decent or above average. And that's just not a championship team. I think it's going to end in heartbreak again for this team. I think that Aaron Rodgers is gone after this year. I understand that he reworked the contract to make him stay there until the end of the 2022 season. But I think after this year, he's going to finally say enough and demand to be let out of Green Bay. Either he's going to retire or he's going to get traded. I think that's really all that's going to happen, especially given the fact, like, I'm not even going to spend much more time on this, but, like, they have Jordan Love. At this point, what are you doing? At this point, what are you doing with Jordan Love? And that's all I'm going to end it on. With all that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. At this point, any of your feedback is much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.